The galaxy was dying. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had kept peace between 12 different species. They traded goods. They shared knowledge. They built beautiful cities on 1,000 worlds. War was something they read about in old books. It was ugly. It was primitive. No civilized species would ever fight again. Then the Viarn came. Nobody knew where they came from. Some said they traveled from another galaxy. Others said they had always been hiding in the dark spaces between stars. It did not matter. What mattered was what they did. The Viarn did not talk. They did not send messages or make demands. They simply arrived at a world, surrounded it with their black ships, and began to take everything. They took the water. They took the air. They took the metals from the ground. When they were done, nothing remained but a dead rock floating in space. Ambassador Telos watched the reports come in. He was a Lumari, a being made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light. His species had not known violence for 10,000 years. Now he stood in the great council chamber and watched world after world go dark. 47 systems, he said to the gathered representatives. Gone in 6 cycles. Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons do nothing. We do not know how to fight. The chamber was silent. Representatives from 12 species sat in their seats, and all of them felt the same cold fear. They had built a civilization based on peace. They had forgotten how to make war. A small representative from the Keth species raised a thin arm. There is one option we have not discussed. Everyone knew what he meant. Nobody wanted to say it. The humans, the Keth said. We could ask the humans. The silence grew heavier. Humans, the youngest species in the known galaxy. They had been discovered 200 years ago on a small blue planet called Earth. At first, the council had been excited. A new intelligent species was always cause for celebration. Then they learned about human history. The council sent observers to study humanity. What they found terrified them. Humans have been fighting wars since the first moment they could hold weapons. They fought over land. They fought over food. They fought over ideas that existed only in their minds. They created weapons that could poison the air and make the ground itself deadly for generations. The worst part was the nuclear bombs. Humans had discovered how to split atoms and release enormous energy. This was a great scientific achievement. Most species used this knowledge to power their cities and ships. Humans had immediately built bombs with it. They built enough bombs to destroy their own planet many times over. Then they pointed these bombs at each other and waited. The council had made a unanimous decision. Humans must never leave their solar system. They were given no faster-than-light technology. They were watched but never contacted. They were quarantined like a dangerous disease. We cannot, Ambassador Telos said. You know what they are. If we give them access to the galaxy, they could become worse than the Viarn. The Viarn are destroying us now, the Keth replied. The humans are only a possibility. The debate lasted for many hours. In the end, fear of certain death defeated fear of possible danger. The council voted. For the first time in 200 years, they would contact humanity. They would ask for help. Far away in the Sol system, Captain Una Park sat in her command chair aboard the orbital station Sejong. She was 42 years old, with short black hair and calm eyes that had seen many things. She had served in the United Earth Defense Force for 20 years. The message arrived on her screen. She read it once. She read it twice. She read it 3 times. Her first officer, Lieutenant Do-hyun Lee, noticed her expression. Captain? What is it? Una turned to look at him. Do-hyun was younger than her, tall and serious. He came from a military family. His grandfather had fought in the last great war on Earth. His father had helped build the first orbital defense platforms. The Galactic Council. Yuna said slowly. They are asking for our help. Do-Hyun's eyes went wide. The same council that locked us in this system? The same council that treats us like animals in a cage? Yes. Why would they ask us for anything? Yuna sent the full message to his screen. She watched his face as he read about the Vyarn. She watched the surprise turn to understanding. They need us to fight, Do-Hyun said. They need us to do the thing they always feared. Yes. Do-Hyun was quiet for a long moment. What do we tell them? Yuna stood and walked to the large window. Earth hung below them, blue and white and beautiful. She thought about her grandmother, who had survived a terrible war on the Korean peninsula. She thought about all the stories of suffering and survival. She thought about what humans had always done when faced with extinction. They fought. They survived. They won. We tell them yes, Yuna said. We tell them we will help. She turned back to face Do-Hyun. There was something hard in her eyes now. Something old. And then we show them what we have been building. We show them what 200 years in a cage has created. Do-Hyun nodded slowly. They have no idea, do they? No, Yuna said. They looked at us and saw dangerous animals. They never considered that dangerous animals might also be very, very patient. She sat back down and began composing her response. The galaxy had called for help. Humanity was about to answer. The Galactic Council expected gratitude. They had given humanity the greatest gift possible. After 200 years of isolation, they were finally offering contact. They were offering friendship. They were offering a place in the galactic community. They expected the humans to be happy. They expected the humans to be humble. They expected small ships and primitive weapons and eager soldiers ready to serve under Council command. They were wrong about everything. The Council delegation waited at Station Omega, a massive structure floating at the edge of Council space. 12 representatives from 12 species stood in the greeting hall. Ambassador Tellus was at the front. His crystal body glowed with nervous energy. Remember, he told the others, humans are emotional beings. They may be grateful to the point of tears. We must be patient with them. The other representatives nodded. They had all studied human psychology. Humans were social creatures. They formed strong bonds. They valued acceptance and belonging. Surely, being welcomed into galactic society would be the happiest moment in their species. History. The human ship arrived. It came out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of blue light. At first, the council representatives could not understand what they were seeing. The ship was too big. Council battleships were elegant things, designed for beauty and efficiency. They were perhaps 1 kilometer long. The human ship was 9 kilometers long. It was not elegant. It was not beautiful. It was a massive block of dark metal covered in weapons. Cannons lined every surface. Missile tubes opened like hungry mouths. Armor plates thick as buildings protected every weak point. The ship was called Guangato. The name meant one who expands territory. That cannot be a warship, one representative whispered. It must be a transport, a cargo vessel. But it was a warship. And it was not alone. Behind the Guangato, more ships appeared. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Heavy cruisers and fast destroyers and ships that the Council's sensors could not even identify. They moved in perfect formation, silent and deadly. This was the first fleet, and it was only one of 12. Admiral Tayson Kang walked into the Council greeting hall with his officers behind him. He was 60 years old with gray hair and a face made of hard lines. He did not smile. He did not bow. He simply stopped and looked at the Council representatives like he was measuring them. "Thank you for coming," Ambassador Tellus said, trying to keep his voice calm. "We are pleased to welcome humanity into Save the Speeches," Admiral Kang said. His voice was flat and cold. You call this because you are dying. You need soldiers. You need weapons. You need people who know how to kill. The representative shifted uncomfortably. We can help with coordination, Telos said. Our technology is more advanced. Perhaps we can advise. No. The word hung in the air. You have been at peace for 3,000 years, Admiral Kang continued. You do not know what war means. You do not know how to think like warriors. You built pretty ships for parades and forgot that weapons exist to destroy. He gestured to the woman beside him. This is Dr. Moran Cho. She leads our Advanced Defense Initiative. She will explain what we bring to this war. Moran Cho stepped forward. She was small and wore simple clothes, but her eyes were sharp. She activated a holographic display, and the council representatives saw things that made them feel sick. Nuclear weapons. Not small ones like humans had built centuries ago. These were planet killers, bombs that could crack a world in half. Biological agents. Diseases designed in laboratories to kill specific species. Drone swarms. Millions of tiny machines that could eat through any armor. Psychological warfare programs. Ways to break an enemy's will to fight before the first shot was fired. You kept us in a cage, Dr. Cho said calmly. You were afraid of what we might do. So we prepared. We assumed the galaxy would be dangerous. We assumed that someday we would need to fight. She smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. We built weapons for every possible enemy. We trained soldiers who are not afraid to die. We created strategies for wars you cannot imagine. Ambassador Telos found his voice. This is too much. These weapons, these tactics, they are monstrous. Admiral Kang nodded. Yes, they are. War is monstrous. The Varan are monstrous. You cannot defeat monsters with kindness and good wishes. He stepped closer to the council representatives. His eyes were hard as stone. You called on humanity because you had no other choice. Now you will accept humanity's way of war. Total war. No limits. No rules except victory. And if we refuse these methods? Telos asked quietly. Then you will die, Admiral Kang said simply. The Viarn will consume every world, every species, every memory of your civilization. You will be nothing but dust. He turned to leave, then stopped. We did not ask to be caged. We did not ask for your fear. But we used that time well. Now you will see what humans do when we fight for survival. The first fleet began to move toward Viarn territory. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had been kept in a cage, and why that cage should have been stronger. The Viarn had never known fear. They had traveled across the empty space between galaxies. They had conquered thousands of worlds. They had faced hundreds of species, and all of them had fallen. Some fought. Some ran. Some begged. It did not matter. The Viarn took everything and moved on. The Helix Nebula was their latest conquest. 17 capital ships floated there, each one the size of a small moon. Around them swarmed millions of smaller vessels. The Viarn did not think of themselves as individuals. They were one mind in many bodies. They worked together like the cells of a single organism. They had already consumed 3 worlds in this nebula. They were preparing to consume the 4th. Then the humans came. Commander G1 Beak did not look like a soldier. She was small and thin, with a quiet face that rarely showed emotion. But she had trained for combat since she was 16 years old. She had killed her first enemy at 20. She had led special operations missions across Earth's most dangerous territories. Now she led 12 soldiers into the heart of a Viarn flagship. Their ship was a captured council cargo vessel. The Viarn did not stop cargo ships. They were not important enough to notice. This was a mistake that would cost them everything. Remember the mission. Ji-won said over the communication channel. Plant the devices. Get out if you can. Die well if you cannot. Her soldiers nodded. They all knew they would probably not survive. They had made peace with this. Some had recorded messages for their families. Others had simply said goodbye in their hearts. They moved through the dark corridors of the Viren ship. The enemy was everywhere, but they did not see the humans. They did not expect an attack from within. They had never faced an enemy willing to walk into certain death. The device they carried was not a bomb. It was something worse. Dr. Cho had designed it after studying the Viren for months. The Viren shared one mind. They thought together, felt together, acted together. This made them strong. But it was also their weakness. The device was a virus for the mind. It would break the connection between Viren individuals. It would turn their greatest strength into chaos. G1 and her team planted the device deep in the ship's power core. The Viren finally noticed them. Alarms began to sound. Enemy soldiers rushed toward them. Activate it, Ji-won said calmly. The device turned on. The effect was instant. The Viren stopped moving. Their shared mind was shattering into millions of pieces. For the first time in their existence, they were alone. They were individuals. They were terrified. The flagship began to tear itself apart. Viren fought Viren. Systems failed. Power cores overloaded. And then the first fleet arrived. Admiral Kang watched the chaos from the bridge of the Guanggato. His face showed no pleasure, no satisfaction, only cold focus. All ships, he said. Attack pattern Delta, maximum firepower. No survivors. The human fleet did not approach carefully. They did not test the enemy's defenses. They charged straight into the Viren formation with every weapon firing. Ensign Sumin Han sat at the forward weapons station. She was 23 years old. Her hand shook slightly as she targeted the first enemy ship. This was her first battle. She had trained on simulations for years, but simulations could not prepare her for real death. Breathe, said the officer beside her. Aim. Fire. Don't think about anything else. Sumin breathed. She aimed. She fired. The kinetic rounds from her station hit the Viren cruiser at impossible speed. The enemy ship broke apart like glass. Target destroyed, Sumin said. Her voice was steady now. Acquiring next target. The battle lasted 9 hours. The Viren could not organize. Their shared mind was broken. They fought as individuals, and individuals were weak. Human ships moved together with terrible precision. They covered each other. They pressed advantages. They showed no mercy. When a human destroyer was damaged beyond repair, its captain aimed the ship at the nearest Viren carrier and accelerated to maximum speed. The explosion took both vessels. When human soldiers were trapped on a sinking ship, they activated their personal explosives and charged into the enemy. When ammunition ran low, human crews switched to ramming attacks. The Viren had never seen anything like this. Every species they had faced wanted to survive. Humans wanted to win. These were not the same thing. By the end, every Viren ship in the Helix Nebula was destroyed. 17 capital ships. Millions of smaller vessels. An entire fleet gone. The human losses were heavy. 4 destroyers destroyed. Over 2,000 personnel killed. Many more wounded. But they had won. Ji-won Beek and 3 of her soldiers made it out of the Viren flagship before it exploded. They floated in space in emergency suits, watching the enemy burn. Report to Guanggato, Ji-won said. Mission successful. When the council received the battle report, they did not know how to react. They had hoped humanity would help. They had not expected humanity to win so completely, but they noticed something in the reports that worried them. The human officers did not write about the battle with horror or regret. They wrote about it with satisfaction. They were proud of what they had done. Humanity was not just fighting the Varan. Humanity was enjoying it. And that was more frightening than the Varan had ever been. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Helix Nebula. Humanity had liberated 32 star systems. The Varan were retreating for the first time in their long history. Worlds that had been marked for death were now free. Species that had prepared to die were now celebrating, but the celebrations were quiet. And they always stopped when human ships entered the system. Ambassador Telos traveled to the Guangato to meet with Admiral Kang. His crystal body flickered with anxiety as he walked through the human warship. Everything about it felt wrong. The walls were covered with tactical displays showing enemy positions. The crew moved with silent efficiency, always ready for battle. There was no art, no beauty. Only function. Admiral Kang met him in a small conference room. The human leader looked tired. His gray hair had become whiter in the past months. But his eyes were still hard, still focused. "Ambassador," he said without warmth, "I assume this is not a social visit." "No," Telos admitted. "I come with concerns." "From the Council? Speak them." Telos activated a holographic display. Images appeared of worlds that humanity had liberated. They did not look liberated. They looked ruined. "The third moon of Kessa," Telos said. "Your forces use nuclear weapons in the atmosphere. The radiation will take centuries to clear." "The Varan had fortified positions there," Kang replied. "Conventional weapons would have taken months." "We did not have months." "The Yenari colony. Your soldiers deployed biological agents. 300,000 Varan died in agony. Those biological agents saved 7 million Yenari civilians. The Varan were about to begin harvesting them. And Keth Prime." Telos's voice grew quieter. "You destroyed the planet's orbital stations. They crashed into the surface. Millions of Keth died." Admiral Kang was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. "I know. I ordered it. The Varan were using those stations to coordinate their fleet. Destroying them ended the battle in hours instead of days. It saved more lives than it cost. Did it?" Telos asked. "How do you measure such things? How do you decide whose lives matter more?" "We don't," Kang admitted. "We make choices. We live with them. We try to save as many as we can while knowing we cannot save everyone." Telos moved closer. His crystal form glowed with emotion. "Admiral Kang, you are winning this war. No one doubts that. But your methods, they are creating fear. Not of the Varan, of you. Of humanity." Kang nodded slowly. "I know. When this war ends, what happens? How do we live with what you have done? How do we live with you?" For a long time, Kang did not answer. He stood and walked to the small window. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. "Let me tell you about my grandfather," he said finally. "He fought in a war on Earth many years ago. His country was invaded. His family was killed. He spent 5 years fighting in the mountains, cold and hungry, watching his friends die one by one." Telos listened in silence. "After the war, my grandfather built a school. He taught children for 40 years. He planted gardens. He raised my father with kindness and patience. When he died, 1,000 people came to his funeral. They remembered him as a gentle man who loved peace." Kang turned back to face Telos. "But during the war, he was a killer. He did terrible things to survive. He never spoke about them, but I saw the shadows in his eyes. War made him a monster. Peace made him human again." "You believe humanity can return to peace?" Telos asked. "After all this?" "I believe we must," Kang said. "That is what separates us from the Varan. They can only destroy. We can also build. Every time we tear ourselves apart, We put the pieces back together. We learn. We grow. We become better. But can the galaxy trust you? After seeing what you can do? Kang smiled, but it was a sad smile. Probably not. You will look at us and see the nuclear fire. You will see the biological weapons. You will see the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. And you will be afraid. He sat back down, suddenly looking old. But your children will be alive. Your worlds will still exist. Your species will have a future. Because we were willing to become monsters so that you did not have to. Tellus was quiet for a long moment. Is it worth it? He asked. The price you pay? The darkness you carry? Ask me when the war is over, Kang said. Ask me when I see the Viren running and know that no more worlds will be consumed. Ask me when I look at the memorial wall and count the names of everyone we lost. He closed his eyes. Then I will tell you if it was worth it. I will probably lie. Outside the window, human ships continued their patrol. They moved like hunters, always watching, always ready. The war was not over, but the cost was already higher than anyone had imagined. And the final price had not yet been paid. The Viren came for Earth. They gathered everything they had left. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. More than 10,000 vessels formed into a single massive fleet. They moved toward humanity's homeworld with one purpose: extinction. The Viren had learned from their defeats. They had seen what humans could do. They understood now that there could be no peace, no negotiation, no surrender. One species would survive. The other would become dust. Humanity knew they were coming. General Yunji-Ru coordinated the defense from the command center on Earth's moon. She was small and calm, with silver hair and steady hands. She had been a soldier for 40 years. She had fought in the last war between human nations. She had hoped never to fight again. Now she prepared for the largest battle in human history. Report, she said. All 12 fleets are in position, her aide replied. Orbital defense platforms are online. Ground-based weapons are ready. The swarm is activated. The swarm was humanity's secret weapon. 3 million autonomous drones controlled by an artificial mind. They could adapt. They could learn. They could fight without fear or hesitation. Admiral Kang stood beside General Ru, looking at the tactical display. The approaching Viren fleet was shown as a red wave moving toward a small blue dot. They outnumber us 3-1, he said. Ru nodded. Historically accurate odds for us. Despite everything, Kang almost smiled. The Viren arrived at the edge of the Sol system. They expected to find a weak enemy ready to fall. Instead, they found a wall. Human ships formed defensive lines around every planet, around every moon, around every station. They did not retreat. They did not maneuver. They simply waited, weapons charged, ready to die. The battle began. Lieutenant Dong Lee commanded the cruiser Incheon. He had served under Captain Park for years. Now he led his own ship, his own crew, his own piece of the line. The Viren came at them like a wave. Do-hyun's ship fired until the weapons glowed red. They destroyed dozens of enemy vessels. But more kept coming. Always more. Captain, his officer said. Engine damage. We cannot retreat. Do-hyun looked at the tactical display. A massive Viren carrier was approaching, its weapons tearing through human ships. Then, we don't retreat, Do-hyun said. He looked at his crew. Young faces. Scared faces. Brave faces. It has been an honor. He aimed the Incheon at the carrier's engine core and accelerated to maximum speed. The explosion tore through the Viren formation. It created a gap that human ships rushed to exploit. Do-hyun's single quotes S name was added to the memorial wall. Doctor, Moran Cho had spent the war improving her neural virus. The new version was more powerful, more permanent. It could shatter the Viren mind completely, but it required close delivery. Someone had to take it directly into the heart of the Viren fleet. "I will go," she said. "You are not a soldier," Admiral Kang protested. "I am human," she replied. "That is enough." She took a small ship deep into the VRN formation. Around her, human vessels died to create a path. She did not look at them. She focused on her target. When she reached the center of the VRN fleet, she activated the virus. It spread through the enemy's shared mind like fire through dry grass. VRN ships began to turn on each other. Command structures collapsed. The wave became chaos. Moran's ship was destroyed moments later. She did not try to escape. Commander Jiwon Beek had been listed as dead since the Helix Nebula. But she was not dead. She had been captured by the Viren. She had spent months as a prisoner, learning their weaknesses, waiting for her moment. When the final battle began, she was inside a Viren command ship. She had gathered other prisoners. They had made weapons from nothing. They had waited. Now they moved. Jiwon led her small group to the ship's core. They fought through corridors filled with confused Vion. They left a trail of destruction behind them. "Set the charges," she ordered. "The antimatter explosives attached to the ship's power systems." Jiwon looked at her soldiers. Only 3 remained. "Go," she said. "Find an escape pod." "Commander, that's an order." They left. Jiwon stayed. She watched the timer count down. She thought of her family, her home, her world. The explosion lit up the void like a new star. The battle lasted 72 hours. When it ended, Earth's moon was covered in impact craters. The orbital stations were burning debris. 3 billion humans had died in the defense, but the Viren were broken. Their fleet was destroyed. Their shared mind was shattered beyond repair. The survivors fled into the void, screaming in their new loneliness. They would never threaten another world again. Admiral Yuna Park, once a simple captain, now commander of what remained, stood on the bridge of the rebuilt Sajang. She watched as council ships arrived to survey the damage. Ambassador Telos came aboard. He looked at the memorial wall, names scrolling endlessly, millions of them. "You saved us," he said quietly. "All of us. Every species in the galaxy." Park nodded. She did not feel like a savior. She felt tired, empty, old. "But at such cost," Telos continued. "To your people, to your souls." Park turned to face him. Her eyes were dry. She had no tears left. "We have always paid this price," she said. "For ourselves. For our children. Now we paid it for strangers who once feared us." She extended her hand. A simple human gesture. "You called on humanity for help. We answered. We gave you everything we had." Telos took her hand. His crystal form was warm. "What happens now?" Park looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy continued. Species lived their lives. Children were born. The future waited. "Now we rebuild," she said. "Now we remember. And now we make sure this was worth something." 100 years later, humanity sat on the Galactic Council. Human diplomats worked for peace. Human traders brought prosperity. Human artists shared beauty. But in every library, in every archive, the same lesson was recorded. If darkness comes, call on humanity, but be certain you need them. Because once they begin to fight, they do not stop until the enemy is ash and memory, and they will make you watch. The galaxy remembered. The galaxy was grateful, and the galaxy was afraid. As it should be.